Hi, welcome to Anaprime Recap. You are a skilled user of magic, but you must defeat a brutal wyvern with only your physical strength. We are in the anime, Saihate no Paladin. Episode 7, 8 and 9. After a long day of walking, the two young men decide to camp out in the middle of the forest to regain their energy. Menel then pleads with the people of nature to grant him a shelter such as a bed of grass, a roof of trees, and tolerance for an unexpected guest. William is amazed to observe that the request his companion made was being realized. During dinner, the elf informs him that he will only take the young man to the place where the demons are, but that he has no intention of helping him defeat the creatures. Hearing this, William doesn't care much and is just grateful just for the fact that he is being guided to his destination. Later that night, he questions whether they will watch the area, but the archer answers him that the fairies will do that job, and if something approaches, they will start making noises to alert them. The next day, the two travelers arrive in a village that, due to the presence of demons in the place, has turned into a ruin. The elf asks the young man to wait in hiding while he scouts the place. When he returns, he tells him that the creatures are planning to perform a ritual in the temple, so many are on guard. The archer tells him that there are two lizard-faced commanders, and William confirms by saying that they were Vrascus, then continues to pass on the information, saying that there are some soldiers patrolling around the area, and in the center of the ruins, there is at least one demonic beast. The young man asks what the beast looks like, and his companion tells him that it has a human head, but a lion's body, and carries with it wings like a bat's. The paladin immediately identifies the creature as a manticore. So, knowing all the information, the young man says that this will not be a problem and that he will finish them all off very quickly. William then surprises the demons in the temple by turning invisible and piercing his spear through the body of one of the commanders, then uses his Kader Aranium ability and conjures a spider web over the half-human beast, thus capturing it and making it impossible for it to perform any action. One of the lizards attacks the young man with its sword, but he successfully dodges it, making a leap over the creature, and then manages to defeat it with his spear. Noticing the enemy movement in his direction, he conjures the oil spell so that all the soldiers fall into a slippery puddle. The manticore manages to break free from the spider's web and advances towards the paladin, who quickly defends himself from its onslaught and immediately uses his spell's acceleration and power, thus finishing with his spear piercing the creature's body. The young man then realizes that he has received help from his companion, for he has eliminated two soldiers with his arrows. He is then questioned as to why he provided reinforcement, but explains that he only took advantage of the situation, since he realized that he had won the combat. The archer mentions that it is unusual for someone to be able to fight several demons alone at the same time, and that William's strength is abnormal, and asks if he has had any special training or anything of the sort. But the paladin jokingly replies that his power was at that level because he eats a lot of bread. William realizes that there are still many souls in that place that have not obtained eternal sleep, so he continues to pray for all the warriors who perished in combat defending his city. Further on, Menel can hear a voice coming from under the wreckage calling him brother, and when he sees this he realizes that it was a villager who had his body burned to a crisp and was still waiting for the elf to return to help him. The archer then holds the young man's hands and apologizes for being late, then says that he should rest and go to sleep. William then prays to Gracefeel, the goddess of light, and asks her to grant peace and guidance to that child, so that his spirit can finally rest. After this, Menel apologizes to the paladin as he had another idea of the young man in his mind. The paladin goes around the village saying his prayers for all those who perished in the battle, and when they have visited the most important places, the elf tells William that there is one last place he would like to visit. In this way, the two young men find themselves in front of a ruined house, and Menel calls for someone, and at the same moment a voice answers his call. Then a ghost named Marple appears to the young men, and Will is distressed by her presence, as he realizes that the old woman possessed a very high level of power. The young man then puts his hand on the overeater, that way ready to attack should she try anything. But the old lady says he doesn't have to worry, after all, she has no intention of doing anything. Menel explains to the old lady that William is a genuine high priest and that he specializes in returning lost souls to the cycle of death and rebirth, and also heals wounded people. Marple doesn't seem to care about all that, but she knows that the archer young man is hiding something. She then says that killing and stealing is not the kind of thing he would do. The young elf, already without patience, questions her, saying that everyone was starving and that he needed to do something about it. While striking the lady's spirit, he claims to doubt the existence of the gods, since they never helped him in anything, and that at that moment he just wanted to end it all by following the same path as her. After all, the life of a half-elf was very long. The old lady then comforts him by telling him that the gods will always be protecting and caring for him, even if he hates them or doesn't believe in their existence. The deities will always be the light that will guide his path. She then asks William to be his friend, because deep down Menel is a good young elf and not on the side of evil. Marple then tells the Paladin that the demons have a fortress deep in the forest and that this is where the beasts and creatures come from to attack all the nearby villages and places in that area, so she tells the young man that she was only stuck there because she had to tell someone about it before she went, so she says goodbye to the young elf and goes on to her cycle of death and resurrection. After learning of this, the two friends search the village for all the bodies of those who have perished and subsequently bring back the humans who managed to escape the demon's attack, so that everyone says their prayers for the souls of the dead and begins to rebuild and bring life back to that small village. At the end of the day, the inhabitants decide to throw a party with the supplies they managed to save before the destruction and call William to eat and drink, since he was the hero who put an end to the creatures that were prowling around that area. As he leaves the party, the Paladin notices a fairy in the middle of the forest and begins to follow her with his spear of light, intending to find Menel. As they approach, the two observe the wonderful view, but the archer says that those ruins are a nest of the undead and that all the adventurers who entered that place never came back. Hearing this, William says he will go there the next day, for there are many beings who have not yet gone to the cycle of life. Taking advantage of the situation, the Paladin asks his companion about Lady Marple, but all he answers is that she was a very strange old woman. And now we learn a little about the sad past of Menel, who was born north of Grassland, in the great forest of Erin, where the elves live. His mother ran away from that place and shortly afterwards returned pregnant by a stranger, gave birth to her son, and perished. He ended up growing up at a different pace from the others, and because of this no one accepted him. Everyone said that the young elf was a great shame, and so he fled into the forest. As he knew how to use a bow and arrow, he managed to survive for a long time on his own, without help from anyone, only from his fairies that only he could see. At this place he was part of a temporary group, but there was a fight over something they found there and one member poisoned all the others, but the young half-elf was the only one who managed to survive, eliminating the traitor afterwards. Walking alone again, the exhausted young elf fainted near a village, and in that place he was saved by Marple, who was much younger at the time. She rescued him, gave him food and shelter, and taught Menel to be a better person. In the end, the young elf tells William that he has his gratitude for having stopped him before he could do something that would have no return and for saving the people of the village, so he asks to receive the divine protection of the goddess of light through his friend. The Paladin then says that he will act as a link to get Menel to form ties with the gods again. He then prays for him in the name of the goddess Gracefeel, pleading that the deity will always walk by his side and light his paths. The elf then swears that from now on, he will be someone kinder and will protect everyone who needs help. The two go back to the village and return to the party, and in his thoughts, William tells Blood and Mary that he believes he has finally found someone to call a friend. The next day, the villagers are starting work on their reconstruction. Realizing that their livestock and tools have been taken, they decide to go to Whitesales to buy more. William, overhearing the conversation, asks what Whitesales is. The workers and Menel are astonished to hear this question, but this way the elf tells the young man about this place. He tells that the place served as a refuge point for humans in the war that happened 200 years ago, which involved the 100 heroes, and immediately the Paladin remembers that this story is part of Blood, Mary and Gus's past. After this, he calls his friend to explore some ruins, and what they find they share equally. After succeeding in their expeditions to ancient temples, the two friends walk back to the village, happy after all they have enough money to buy cattle and new tools for work. However, they are surprised by a shout from someone who was also in that place. Both of them encounter a giant monkey running after an old man and a little girl. The girl hits a rock on the giant to save her colleague, then the monster starts coming towards her. Already cornered, she realizes that someone has stepped in front of her to protect her. William then finds himself facing that monkey and remembers the teachings of Blood that he taught him in the past, where in a fight, the first one who looks away from his opponent loses. The young man at that moment fixes his eyes on his opponent, and in this way the monkey goes away intimidated. The little girl is amazed at his courage and says her name is Rabina Goodfellow, but he could call her B, a minstrel who dances and sings wherever the wind takes her. Menel introduces himself and asks if the pair did not have some sort of escort, but the Lord replies that they ended up running away when they ran into danger. The elf laughs at the situation and says that he was very naive, but that they could help them as escorts, however they were owed one. The merchant then asks what the young elf meant by that. The half-elf then replies that he needs to buy cows and horses in Whitesales. The merchant understands the situation and assures the young elf that when they arrive in town, he will take them to a perfect place to do their shopping, so the group goes together to their destination. When they arrive in a village, Bee begins to perform her presentation and attracts a large number of people around her. Antonio stays near the show, selling his products, and Menel understands how the partnership system of the two works. The merchant then calls William and asks if he can cure any disease with his power, and the young man says yes, but he is still an apprentice. The Lord then asks him to heal the wound that was on a child's arm, and so he does, saying that he doesn't receive any money around here, but that they could buy something from the merchant as a form of thanks. Later, they come across a wheat path, and near there they decide to rest. B has the idea to sing one of her troves, and everyone starts to listen to it. William, hearing that song about 3 heroes who saved a village from a monster, deduces that it is a very old adventure of Blood, Mary and Gus. Before they were known as heroes, the friends traveled together and were responsible for defeating a wyvern that threatened the villagers. The villagers chose a beautiful half-elf to be sacrificed to appease the demon's ferocity. That night a young boy knocks on their door and offers them a small amount of coins to save his friend from the claws of the creature. The warrior says that this will not be enough, but the young man replies that he puts his own skin up for sale to achieve peace in his village. Seeing this noble attitude, the future heroes mobilize and agree to kill the flying demon. The wyvern approaches to kill the sacrifice that was offered to it, but is trapped by Gus's magic, ligature, thus binding the beast with a seal. Mary, who was disguised as being the monster's tribute, takes the lead and helps her friend, thus both manage to immobilize the creature on the ground. It is at this moment that Blood advances at high speed and with just one stroke of his sword, cuts off the head of the huge dragon. After all that, the heroes return the money to the young man, adding an extra amount. The young man says he cannot accept it, but Mary replies that they should take care of each other and go their separate ways together. The young man then travels to another village with his half-elven friend, while the group goes on their next journey. B announces that this is the end of the song, but she has another story to tell. It is about Count Dagger from the Feral Kingdom. His real name was Wizard's Dagger. In his mansion there is a half-elf who is waiting for someone who knows the real name of the wise man so that one day he will repay them for their help and return that money. William is moved by the story because there are still many people in the world who remember the hero's deeds, and knowing this, the young man is extremely happy that his memories will be remembered forever. The next morning, the Paladin was training, and at that moment the merchant Antonio approached him to talk to the young man. He realized that the young man had a kind soul and fights for the weakest. He asked the young man what he wished for, but the young man could not give an assertive answer at first, but at the end of the dialogue, he said he wished to have friends, only friends by his side. When Tonio hears this, he is happy because he believes that he will make many friends along his journey. The group then sets out on their journey and on the way learns that the town of Whitesails is being governed by a new leader and the political situation there seems to be complicated to understand. B then calls for William and brings the young man to observe the wonderful view of that village he has heard so much about. At last he knows why his family sacrificed themselves. The group finally arrives at the destination city and begins to explore all the areas. They visit jewelry stores, the city's swimming pool and sauna, where William finally manages to take a bath. Since during all his traveling the young man used purification magic on his body, he is also amazed because for the first time, he discovers the city's lampposts. After all, in the temple where he lived, there were not all these features. The adventurers gather at a restaurant and the Paladin finally manages to eat a good meal for the first time since he left on his journey. Antonio tells them that the next stop is the city temple, where the young man should offer his prayers to his goddess. When William arrives at the place, he has problems to perform his presences, since the official there says that the priests of the divinity of light are quite uncommon in that region, so the young man will have to go through a faith prayer detection to prove his loyalty. The Paladin then meets with Father Bagley, who coordinates that temple. The young man introduces himself and explains his entire situation to him. His superior then asks him to confirm his loyalty to Gracefeel, so he recites the teachings he has received and finally has his name noted in the register and concludes his prayer. At an inn that has been granted to them in the temple, the group talks about the temple chief and his suspicious attitudes, but at this moment they are surprised by a wyvern that is attacking and bringing chaos to the entire city, leaving several people seriously injured with its fire attacks. William runs to the top of the temple and conjures his electricity magic towards the demon but misses his target. He is frustrated because this is his longest range spell. Just as he is about to try conjuring again, Menel appears on his side and argues with the young man to have more control of himself. So the young man asks his friend to help him by conjuring his fairies and tells B and Antonio to be responsible for bringing the people near that place into the temple. So William conjures an electric spider web that is carried to the creature by the elf young man's fairies. This combination of powers, when they collide with the demon, causes moderate damage but still not enough to defeat it. The wyvern, identifying his enemies, flies at high speed in his direction. The Paladin then knows that he is the only one who can end all that situation, so he prays to Gracefeel for protection for everyone in that temple, and after his prayer, a magical barrier is formed around the whole place, making it impossible for the monster to attack them. However, using his dark strength, the creature destroys the protection but is quickly restrained by Will, who uses his magic to bind the demon, so that the beast finally falls to the ground and the paladin conjures his acceleration spell to finally manage to strike the demon's body with his spear but still fails to eliminate it. Remembering Blood's teachings about using violence at the right time, the young man then holds onto the wyvern and squeezes it with all his strength until he breaks its neck, putting an end to all that destruction. The young man is applauded by all the villagers and fortunately receives the title of Wyvern Slayer, so William remembers his heroes and strongly believes that he is following the same path as them. While everyone was helping to clear the debris from the city, a messenger comes forward to the paladin, saying that the ruling prince wishes to see him. When he arrives at the royal palace, the young man introduces himself to the ruler Ethelbald and is immediately questioned about how he defeated the monster. The prince asks him if he received help to be able to eliminate the demon, but he says that he was responsible for all the spells and that he received help from Menel, who invoked his fairies to help him. Understanding the situation, Ethelbald bows to William and thanks him on behalf of all the inhabitants of Whitesails and asks the young man what he would like as a reward. The young man then informs him about the situation in the fairy forest and the sudden demon attacks on the villages, asking the ruler to send his troops to put an end to the demons. The prince then says that this request is not impossible, but he will not be able to fulfill it. After all, sending his soldiers into the forest would leave the city without protection. So William has the idea to ask his permission to form a group of soldiers and mercenaries with his own money, in order to destroy the demons in the fortress. Ethelbald studies the possibility of accepting the young man's idea, but certainly only for his own sake. Do you believe that William will be able to form an army to fight the forest demons? So, what did you think of this anime? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like it and subscribe for more anime recaps. See you next time.